This is the Crimson Corner with Bill Riley.
Walks it into the end zone for a Utah touchdown.
Your source for the best insight on everything happening in and around Utah athletics. Now, here's the host of the Crimson Corner, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley.
Welcome in to the latest edition of the Crimson Corner podcast. I'm your host, Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. Big thank you to Advanced Window Products, the sponsor of this podcast each and every week. On this week's edition of the Crimson Corner, the Utes are readying themselves for Vegas. Again, 7th trip to the Vegas Bowl, all time for Utah. Kyle Whittingham, is he staying or is he going? We'll dive into that just a little bit. Give you a quick thought on Utah's recruiting class, which was signed up last week. And high school recruiting doesn't feel like it has the same kind of cachet that it once did. Signing day used to be a huge deal now with the advent of the transfer portal, but it's still a very important part of building a program. So we'll do that. Special guest for this week's podcast. He's a Nebraska legend. Of course, Utah playing Nebraska in the Vegas Bowl. Damon Benning is going to join us on the program today. We'll also talk about the Runnin' Utes and where they are after 10 games and a changing of the guard at Utah Athletics and Utah Volleyball. All of that on today's edition of the Crimson Corner presented by Advanced Window Products. We're going to start right here. Utes going to the Vegas Bowl, and they'll face Nebraska on New Year's Eve afternoon at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. 10-2 season for Utah, 7-2 in the Big 12. If you would have told me that before the year, I would have told you they're probably playing for a Big 12 title. They've probably put themselves in position to play in the college football playoff, but not this year. They're on the outside of the playoffs looking in. They're at number 15. That's where they ended up in the final college football playoff poll, and guess what? That's about where they should be. That's fair. You know, there's a lot of teams that can argue about not being in, not being out, all that stuff. That Utah's not one of those teams. Utah had a very good season. By all metrics, a 10-2 season, a 7-2 season in your conference is a very good season. And it is. Utah should be proud. 10 wins, double-digit win seasons are not easy. But they don't really have an argument to be in the college football playoff. There's a bunch of 10-2 teams. The teams that are right in front of them: Vanderbilt, better resume. Texas, 3 losses, still a better resume. BYU, you hate to say it because you're a Utah fan, but they beat you head-to-head, and their 2 losses are to a team that's number 3 in the college football playoff poll. Better resume. Excellent season. One game is really the difference between Utah probably being in the playoff and not being in the playoff, but that's, as they say, how the ball bounces. And it's football, so that ball doesn't give you a very true bounce. So still an excellent season, 10-2, outstanding. You're going to play in a decent bowl game. If you're not playing before Christmas, you're playing in a decent bowl game. I always said those bowl games before Christmas, and that's, by the way, where the Vegas Bowl used to be. They're not great bowl games. The only advantage to playing in that game is you're home for Christmas. The Utes, they're going to be in Vegas on New Year's Eve afternoon, and they're playing a good opponent. I was hoping, to be fair, and again, we'll talk about Nebraska coming up with Damon Benning. I was hoping for a slightly better opponent, maybe Iowa. Iowa's ranked. They had a really good year this year, but they ended up getting moved up because of some of the results in the college football playoff rankings. So Utah sees Nebraska. Nebraska started out great. They won 5 of their first 6 games, but they stumbled down the stretch. They lost their star quarterback, Dylan Raiola. He missed the last couple of games. They ended up losing their final 2 games. They finished 7-5 on the season. And with this bowl game coming up, Raiola's out for the year, and he's done. And the one guy that was a stud for them this year, their star running back, he's not going to play either. He's already declared that he's going to the NFL. He had a 1,500-yard rushing season and 12 touchdowns. And I don't blame him. If I had that kind of season too, I would not want to jeopardize my draft status. So he's not going to play. So it will be a Nebraska team that's kind of limping into Las Vegas just a little bit. But still, it'll be a great crowd because here's what I know. Growing up in the Midwest, if you grew up in the Midwest, you know this. Nebraska fans, they travel. They go. There's going to be so much red at Allegiant Stadium on New Year's Eve afternoon between Utah and Nebraska. And the Nebraska fans, Utah isn't very often down in Las Vegas, especially on the underside of the crowd, but they might be because Nebraska fans are insane. They're everywhere and they love to travel. So just a note for you Utah fans, get your tickets. Get down there. It should be a pretty compelling game. It should be a game where by the way, Utah is favored by almost 2 touchdowns in this game right now, if you believe the guys in Vegas. But the crowd should be excellent. The venue, you guys have been down there before. You were down there for probably one or both of the Pac-12 championship games. You might have gone down for the bowl game a couple of years ago against Northwestern. It will be a good game and a good opponent. And to be fair, a chance for Utah to win a bowl game, which we'll get to here in a minute. History between the two schools. They've met 4 times all time. Last time they got together was in the early 90s. Nebraska has won every time they've played, but all 4 of those games have been in Lincoln as well. They never played in Salt Lake City, and they haven't played at a neutral site. And I don't think Utah's probably been favored in any of those games either like they are right now. So that's the history between the two schools. What's at stake? Well, Utah, get this, they're shooting for their first 11-win season since 2019. Remember, that was the other year where they were on the precipice of making the playoffs. If Utah beats Oregon in the Big 12 or Pac-12 championship game, they're in the playoff. They would have been the 4th team in, probably 3rd or 4th team in. But 11 wins is nothing to shake a stick at, man. An 11-win season is phenomenal. It could be the second of the Whittingham, actually the second 11-win season, the second, make it third 11-plus win season of the Whittingham era. Remember, they won the 12 games in the Sugar Bowl season, went 12-0 in that season. 11 wins would be a fantastic year, and as I mentioned a minute ago, a chance for a first bowl win. Do you guys know the last time Utah won a bowl game? Remember, Kyle Whittingham had that unbelievable streak of bowl wins. He won like 6 or 7 or 8 in a row. They have not won a bowl game since 2017. West Virginia in that Zaxby's, First Responders Bowl, whatever it is in Dallas, on that horribly cold, wet day at the Cotton Bowl the day after Christmas, that was the last time Utah won a bowl game. So a chance for a first bowl win, a chance for an 11-win season, and a chance to carry some real momentum into 2026. That's what's at stake when Utah and Nebraska square off coming up in the Vegas Bowl in a couple of weeks. We'll talk more about that bowl game coming up. Damon Benning, who is an all-time great Nebraska running back, is going to join us. He's a color analyst on their football broadcast. He's going to join us to kind of fill in a few more gaps on the Huskers, but we'll talk about that coming up when he joins us in a few minutes here on Crimson Corner. Kyle Whittingham, he's a bit of a topic right now amongst Utah fans. What's his future at the University of Utah? Let me start by saying this. I have zero insider information. I work with Kyle, but Kyle is very close-lipped. He keeps his life and business decisions very much in a tight circle. He does not share a lot. There was an alleged deadline a week ago for Whittingham to tell the school whether he was coming or going. That was not made public. I've said all along, all fall long, and I firmly believe this, that he really seems to still enjoy coaching. He does not seem burned out in any way, shape, or form. That's the vibe I've got from being around him this fall. Why is that? Well, having a really good football team, that will help. That will help a ton. And they're a really good football team. He's got a lot of talent coming back to this program. He's got a great staff in place. This Utah football program is in a really good place. And that makes it hard to walk away from if you're Kyle Whittingham, because let's face it, he's 66, but he's a young 66. He's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot to give the game. So, will he stay or will he go? As I said, I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any insider knowledge. But I'm close to him, and again, as close as a guy can be that's not in his family or not on his coaching staff. We've worked together for 20 years. But I have no insider knowledge. He's not told me one thing one way or another. And I'm not going to bug him about that. This is a life decision for him. And when he makes up his mind, he'll make up his mind. But the sense that I get is I think he'll stay and coach. I think we would have probably heard if he wasn't, but I don't know that for sure. But that's the sense I get. And this is Bill Riley saying this to you. I think he believes if he has the right amount of support and backing to continue to compete at the highest level, that he could continue to coach. Program's in a great spot, but we all know the changing landscape of college athletics means you've got to have as much support as possible. And if he feels like he's got that and he can still compete for both the Big 12 and be on the national stage as well, I think he'll probably want to come back. When we find that out, I don't have any idea. But I do think my gut tells me that I think he still wants to coach. So we'll see in the coming days. But that's just my 2 cents worth on the situation without any insider information. We'll see how that thing plays out. Recruiting class real quick. Last week was National Signing Day. Like I said, it used to be such a big day. I mean, all over the country when those fax machines were whirring and spitting out letters of intent. I mean, you were talking about the future of your program. You couldn't wait to see how this high school, and here's my approach has always been this way. I've never made a big deal out of National Recruiting Signing Day for high school kids because they're high school kids, and it's so hard to project how they're going to be coming in. Some of these kids, most of these kids, don't make an impact as freshmen. They just simply don't. A handful of them can, and probably a handful in Utah's class next year will. But, you sign 17, 20, 25 kids, maybe 2 or 3 of those kids as freshmen make a real impact. You usually don't see an impact for a high school recruiting class for a couple of years inside your program. So I've never made a huge deal out of it. That said, you still want to look at it and see what you've got. And I think Utah landed some really nice pieces. For them to be able to flip Celeste Moa from Tennessee, local, he's the number 1 recruit in the state of Utah. His dad played here for Urban Meyer and Ron McBride. We all know Ben Moa. For them to be able to flip him from Tennessee, a very prominent throw the ball, he's a wide receiver, a very prominent throw the ball SEC offense is a huge deal. For them to land the number 1 recruit in the state of Idaho, who was a top 50 national recruit, Kelvin Obat, who was, by the way, coached in high school by former Utah great Jordan Gross, for them to land him is a huge deal. Moa and Obat are 2 guys that are top 50 recruits. First time Utah's had that in their history, 2 top 50 recruits in the same class, because I think both those guys could be impact guys next year in the Utah program. Utah has really lacked a big-time number 1 wide receiver, a game-changing wide receiver. They've had good receivers. Ryan Davis this year was a good receiver, but I'm talking about a guy that's 6'2", 195 pounds, who can run, can take the top off a defense. They just haven't had a lot of that. That's what Celeste Moa is. And he might be a guy that could be Travis Hunter in the future and play both ways, but for now I think they like him at wide receiver, and they need him at wide receiver. And they need a replacement for, we don't know it's for sure, but come on, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Spencer Fano's not coming back. Spencer Fano is going to be a top 10 pick in this, maybe top 5 pick in this year's NFL draft. Well, Kelvin Obat is a guy that they feel could stick in day 1 and replace Spencer Fano at right tackle. So the fact that you could, they signed 15 other guys in this class. The other guy I like too is, by the way, LaMarcus Bell. He's a running back recruit he's the number 2 recruit out of Oregon. And he turned down Oregon, Washington, some of these other programs to come play at Utah. You can never have too many good running backs. And you just can't, especially at Utah where they like to use them. So I think all 3 of those guys, as I look at them, are huge gets for Utah and could be guys that impact the program next year. What it all means, we don't know today. We'll know in the years to come. But when you look at it, those are some really nice pieces. But the real fun's going to begin when the transfer portal opens in a little less than a month. And then we see who's staying at Utah, who's going from Utah, and then who Utah can bring in to add and supplement their program. But that's another discussion for another day on another podcast. We'll get to that probably after the first of the year. Coming up, though, the Utes are playing in Vegas. I love the matchup on paper with Nebraska. Like I said, I wish Nebraska was a little bit better this year, but still, they have a fan base that travels. They're going to try and end their season on a high note, and I think it's a good matchup for Utah, to be fair. Damon Benning, who's the color analyst on the Nebraska broadcast, a former great I-back at Nebraska. He'll join us coming up to talk a little bit about this matchup, get his thoughts on this year's Nebraska's team, and also on what his thoughts on Utah as well. That'll be coming up here on Crimson Corner next.
Here's another insider interview on the Crimson Corner podcast.
Special guest on the Crimson Corner podcast today. Utah's less than a month away from playing in the bowl game, 10-2 on the season. They're going to go to Las Vegas again and play in a bowl game against a team they haven't seen for quite some time. You've got to go all the way back to the early 90s for the last time Utah and Nebraska played. In fact, I don't even think our next guest was at Nebraska yet the last time they played. He's a former running back. He's the color analyst on their broadcast and a proud native of Nebraska. Great to have in former Husker and current Husker broadcaster Damon Benning here on the Crimson Corner. How are you, Damon?
I'm good. Looking forward to this one. It seems like it's a ways away, but we won't tell that to the coaches because before you know it, it'll be right here.
So let's start with this. The season for Nebraska has been what?
Up and down, right? They've lacked a little consistency. I think, in some areas, probably the culture piece, the development, the growth, the vision of the program has been a huge positive. I think the roster is getting kind of where they want it. I think from a talent standpoint, they obviously need to upgrade in a couple of places, but for the most part, they've got a really good young group that they're really excited about. I think, it's always about how you finish in this league, and Novembers have been tough around here. And obviously with disappointing losses to Penn State and Iowa, it changed the tenor seemingly overnight of the trajectory of the season. And so up and down is probably the simplest way to describe it.
You guys started the season, Damon, winning 5 of your first 6. The only setback was that close one with Michigan. What happened over kind of that second half of the season? I know we'll get to the quarterback position. Certainly that played a role in it, but that wasn't till a little bit later. What did you see in the second half of the season?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. Number one, we set up kind of this showdown. It was a critical game. Nebraska was coming off the win against Maryland. It was a gutsy win on the road, back and forth, kind of an explosive game. And we kind of saw really Nebraska at the quarterback spot, Dylan Raiola really being Dylan Raiola, where he had thrown a couple of picks, but threw for over 300 yards. They ran the ball well, threw for 4 touchdowns. It was this explosive offense. Defensively, they had a special teams touchdown, which has been huge for Nebraska this year. Really quality special teams, and I know their bowl game opponent has good special teams too. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. But back to kind of what happened was you head into USC and Nebraska's up 10 points or whatever, and they're driving, and Dylan breaks his leg, and that game ended up getting away from Nebraska. They played well defensively, kept SC down, well under their rushing average, certainly did not throw the ball well against Nebraska. And so there was kind of this optimism. There was this, we were close, but Dylan got hurt. And so there was kind of this feel-good vibe. They go out to, UCLA, and they're playing better. And it was UCLA, right? That was kind of the consensus. And then, Penn State and Iowa happened, where I think what was really different, it wasn't just the quarterback play and kind of what the offense looked like. It was the defense went from, being a little light against the run, but they weren't giving up explosives, right? It was kind of 6-7 yards. They weren't explosives for scores. And the secondary had been fantastic. They were top 10 in the country. They were getting teams off the field. But against UCLA, Iko Iamaleava had thrown for, 170. They gave up 181 to Penn State, 166 to Iowa, where just everything started to kind of go south at once defensively. And it didn't seem like they were being as physical and playing as hard. So it's up to this point as it stands today, we're kind of in this wait and see mode. Nebraska's since have gotten rid of their defensive coordinator. They've hired, Bob Ulrich, who I think is going to be a heck of a find out from, the West Coast, but he's got Midwest ties. We've got a new offensive line coach, and it just speaks to kind of that up and down. It was really, really good, and then there was a key midseason injury, and the defense got away from Nebraska a little bit, and now here we are.
So, Nebraska football, I grew up in the Midwest, and when I grew up in the Midwest, Nebraska football was a machine. You were part of that machine. Dr. Tom and the offensive lines and the running game and Turner Gill and you name it. And back after back, I back you. And you were part of that tradition. And then after the release and after they got rid of Frank Solich, it was kind of a roller coaster for 10 or 12 years. Have things settled a little bit now in Lincoln with Matt Rule? Are you to the point where you feel good about the direction of where things are going?
Yeah, I love it. And I get it, right? We're going to have a little bit of a staff turnover, and it's been a couple of coordinators and a handful of years, but I'm just going to tell you, when I talk, and I've covered this thing forever, and you mentioned me playing it in the 90s, and I was a fan before that. This is about as closely as I've seen it aligned from an administrative standpoint, from a fan base standpoint, from an athletic coaching vision standpoint, that I've seen it since maybe early Bill. I'll go back to Bill Byrne, Coach Osborne, mid 90s, where the like-minded group, I think, we're all moving and pulling in the same direction. Troy Dannon is an outstanding athletic director, doesn't complain about what they don't have, focuses very much on what they do have. Coach Rule, not a guy that makes a ton of excuses, likes to do hard things, preaches accountability, always starts with himself. Never talks about what Nebraska isn't, always talks about what Nebraska could be. And I think now it's quelled a little, but even for the fan base, I think most, 85% approval rating. Again, back-to-back bowl games, you have to start somewhere. I get it. The floor this season was probably 6 wins. I don't think many saw 7. I think the ceiling was probably 9. So again, it's all on how it looks, but in terms of alignment from a vision with the athletic department, the state, the resources, and the coaching, it's as closely aligned as it's been since I've been covering the sport.
Obviously, you mentioned Dylan Raiola. He's your QB1. He gets hurt. TJ Lateef comes in. I'm looking at his numbers. They're not bad considering he's a backup quarterback being called on to play. Do you feel like he's settled in after getting a few starts and he'll kind of be ready to go against Utah?
Yeah, he looked good early and had the hamstring issue against Iowa. I felt like he was really good in Pasadena against UCLA and kind of his first start going back home. He's a Compton kid. So I felt like he handled what came with that really well. Penn State, he showed some toughness. That was as talented a bunch as anybody that Nebraska had played all year, and that includes SC and Michigan. Even without Drew Aller, I thought Grunkmeyer played well. He wasn't 11 of 12 for 188 good, but that was a talented Penn State bunch, and there were some rough patches there, I think, at State College, and then against Iowa they got off to a good start. Took the early lead, just a little pressure in the pocket, tweaked a hammy, and it was kind of downhill from there. So while he finished the game and he's a really tough kid, he wasn't particularly healthy, and he won't make excuses. I won't make excuses. Nebraska won't make excuses. It's just part of the growing pains and the maturation for a first half year quarterback in TJ Lateef, but he's extremely capable, and that much I believe in. And much like you guys are familiar with in Utah, about quarterback depth and what it means and how many quarterbacks you can see. As a guy that followed the Cam Rising saga the last handful of years from afar. So I think Lateef's the guy that's kind of growing into this deal, and he should be ready to go come the 31st.
Utah went from one of the worst quarterback situations a year ago in the country, last 2 years, namely because of the rising situation. They were blessed this year with Beth Dampier and the freshman from Oklahoma, Bird Ficklin. So I'm guessing, I don't know because we're a couple of weeks out still, but I'm guessing we'll see both those guys in the bowl game. Damon, anybody that's followed college football knows, and I mentioned this earlier, IBAC University. I don't think they're called IBACs anymore. That was
I wish they were, but I'm with you.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Tailback, whatever you want to call it, running back, whether it was Rozier or Red Wine or Jones or I don't know, Ahmad Green, Damon Benning, Lawrence Phillips. I mean, we could go down the line. These were guys that haunted me as a Jayhawk, as a child. But there's another great one there. But I don't think we're going to see him. Emmett Johnson had a great year, 1,400, almost 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns. I don't think we're going to see him in the bowl game, are we?
No, and he's, he's coming out early, and, he got hot, right? He's a Minnesota kid from up there in the Eden Prairie area. Such a tough-minded, kind of stick-to-it guy. Really was the lifeblood of this offense, especially the second half of the season as the offensive line really started to come around and really become really good run blockers. And EJ was the guy that served as the bell cow. So, with him declaring and being out for the bowl game, they have a couple of really young guys that I think the fan base has been excited about, but just haven't seen a ton of. They got a true freshman in Mosey, who's a really talented player, and arguably the most electric on the roster, and Mekhi Nelson from the Pennsylvania area, who's a redshirt freshman, tough kid, undersized, is a home run threat, really tough runner, good special teams guy. And then they'll probably take a look at either a guy like Quentin Ives or Kenneth Williams, who was second team all conference as a kick returner, who's also in the running back room. So it'll be by committee, but the talent is there. But make no mistake about it. EJ, the way he ran, the ambassador that he was competitive, never took plays off. He was the lifeblood of that offense, and he'll be sorely missed.
All right, I've got to ask a question, a selfish question now. As somebody who grew up as a Nebraska fan, your favorite I-back of all time is who, besides yourself?
Roger Craig.
Okay.
I'm a Roger Craig guy.
And Tom, you got to throw Rathman in there too, because they were a duo.
Yeah, great individuals right there. I mean, Rathman is salt of the earth kind of guy. But if the most talented is Lawrence. He was my roommate. There were none like him. The next best was probably Rozier, who was as gifted as anyone, a tough guy, always around the university now still, even as a Camden guy up there in the Northeast. But Craig was my favorite. He's why I wore 21.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Grew up watching him. By the way, did one of the Macavickas block for you? Because it felt like there was always a Macavicka at fullback in Nebraska.
Both. I had Joel and Jeff. So Jeff's the older one. He's an attorney now. He's super fit. He's like $170, and he looks like he could model. And his little brother Joel is got Macavicka therapy. So there are about 1,700 of them in the state of Nebraska. He's cornered the market on the PT industry. So. Super successful family, and I played with both of them.
Are we ever going to see a return of the black shirts to Nebraska?
Yeah, so that's the key, right? I think if they want to do anything of national relevance going forward, it's got to be built up front. They're going to see a team in the bowl game, depending on the prowess is physicality, and they get after you. That's your head coach, who Nebraska fans have an amazing appreciation for. They're preparing for, is this the last hurrah? Is it not? There were coaching vacancies that would come open in Lincoln, and his name always came up. There's a definite appreciation for the physicality and the style that Utah plays with, and it's something that needs to come back to Lincoln on a full-time basis. It's not just enough to be able to don the jersey and call them black shirts. It's a style of play. It's a physicality. It's a mindset. And I think when Nebraska turns the corner on a national scale, it'll start with that defensive front, which is one of the reasons, coincidentally, I think Nebraska made a change heading into the 2026 calendar year.
So Charlie McBride's not coming out of retirement.
No, but he sure does patrol the airwaves, and he's definitely a presence. And, sometimes it's just interesting, whether it's George Darlington or Charlie McBride or some of these guys. Coach Osborne still lives in Lincoln. I felt like one of the key ingredients for Nebraska's coach, and one of the reasons I really, really appreciate Coach Rule. We've got a fantastic relationship, and I love his approach to life. He stays on the attack, and he's what I call a true lifelong learner. He understands the ghosts of yesteryear and history and tradition, but he's not held captive by it. And it's such a unique balance to understand the greatness that's always at practice or walking around, or the statues that have been erected around campus. There can be a great appreciation. Coach Rule was one of the first to get Coach Solich back on campus. You'd see a practice where Coach McBride, Coach Solich, and Coach Osborne would be at the complex this year. I mean, there's something that comes with that. And Coach Rule has taken it in stride. He's embraced it. He hasn't ran from it, but he knows he doesn't have to be a victim of it either. So the unique balance of yesteryear versus moving the program forward have been fascinating to watch, because we've seen it eat up a lot of coaches since Coach Osborne and since the departure of Coach Solich. So I like Coach Rule's temperament, and I like the vision he's casting.
So my question for you is, what kind of crowd are we going to see? Nebraska fans always travel well. So do Utah fans. Short drive for Utah fans, 5-6 hours. But down season, maybe not the season they quite expected. Are you expecting a good travel contingent from the Husker fans?
Absolutely. We've seen nothing but, tour travel, commercials. It's been across the news, across the state, the best ways to travel, the dates, the flights, when to do it, the travel agencies. New Year's Eve in Las Vegas is New Year's Eve in Las Vegas. And I think there's this weird thing about Nebraska's fan base, whether it's online polls, whether it's social media presence, they just answer the challenge. And with the rumors floating around about how much longer Coach will be at the helm in Utah, and the turnout that Nebraska fans think Utah will come to Vegas with, there's this weird competitiveness about all the red that will show up and who's wearing it. So I think there will be a tremendous Nebraska contingency there, and it should be fun because Utah gets after it as well, and it should be a fascinating matchup. I don't know how confident the Nebraska fan base is. It's a little, a little doom and gloomy, but I'm telling you, the closer it gets to game time, they'll show up.
All right, last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't get a thought from you on Utah, who you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Kyle Whittingham will be coaching that game. Everybody around here is wondering how much longer too, but I can tell you because I work with him, he's still got that fire to coach. He's not thinking about it right now, but a team that should be after your own heart because they're second in the country in rushing yards. They love to get an offensive line like one of the ones you used to run behind. So give me a quick thought on a 10-2 Utah team.
Man, they're fantastic. I love their physicality up front. Two of the best offensive linemen in the country, a physical offensive line. I love Dampier. We have a quarterback draft on our morning show, and two listeners got to win to draft, and there's 5 of us at the company. Dampier was a guy that I took. We assigned points. Now I finished in 3rd place, but my team looked really good on paper. I had Iamaliava, I had Sellers, I had Dampier. I felt like I was in good shape. So the quarterback situation and how you guys run the football is something that is near and dear to my heart. But when I speak to Coach Whittingham and kind of what he brings, it's toughness and it's consistency. And I'd be kidding you if I told you I'm not a little bit jealous of that. I love when over time people can do hard things every day and be consistent with us. It's what Wisconsin does. It's what Minnesota does. It's what Iowa does. They do tough things every day. And no program under Coach Whittingham seems to embody that more than Utah. So It's an impressive bunch on paper, and Nebraska knows. Coach Rule talked about it in the pregame bowl or the pre-bowl press conference. Matching Utah's physicality is a must, and he's building in extra practices just to try to set the tone of what it's going to take to stand up physically. They've got to be somewhere on par with that Michigan front they saw. We saw a tremendous front at Iowa. There are some very good physical fronts in this conference, but boy, Utah does it about as well as anybody, and the statistics back that up.
Well, last thing, you know this because you played in it, because Coach Osborne built it. There's something to be said for having a culture and an expectation in a program, and Kyle's had that here for 21 years.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's so admirable, and I'm not kidding you. When, right after Coach Pelini was let go, and I think 15, and one of the names that kept coming up was Coach Whittingham, and what Nebraska fans wanted in a program, and the toughness. And shoot, that was 8-9 years ago, and people wondered, well, okay, if we made a run at him, like how much longer would he coach? And here we are almost 10 years later, and he's maybe better than he's ever been. So the level of appreciation that Nebraska, it is unique. And I think you'll be blown away at the reverence that is authentic and not manufactured for the way that Coach Whittingham runs that program. You'll hear just unabashed gushing over the way that this program is ran. And just know, up until that opening kick, it will be about as sincere as it gets. It is this weird, unique, symbiotic, wish we were kind of them, we appreciate you kind of thing when it comes to Coach Whittingham and that program.
Well, Damon, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate Utah fans tuning in, getting a great scout and some background on the Huskers. Have a great Christmas, and I'll look forward to seeing you and your whole crew in Vegas on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's good to hear, we share the same, my current boss, your former boss. God bless Play 5, man. We'll see you soon. Hopefully get a chance to break bread maybe.
Thank you, Damon.
You got it.
The best insight on all things Utah athletics. It's the Crimson Corner Podcast.
Big thank you to Damon Benning. Looking forward to meeting him in person down in Vegas and seeing the Utes and the Cornhuskers and all that red at Allegiant Stadium coming up on January 31st at about 1:30 Mountain Time. It's a great time, by the way. You can go out, watch a little football, come down to the game. You could be home that night if you wanted to, if you're a Utah fan, if you drive, or hang out in Vegas like I will and celebrate a little New Year's Eve. Should be fun. Huskers, and we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks here on Crimson Corner. A little bit of basketball, a little bit of volleyball for you as we wrap things up. Running Utes, 10 games into the Alex Jensen era. They're 7-3. Still a little bit of a work in progress. Alex and his staff, and Alex and I talk every week on the Alex Jensen Coaches Show and times in between as well. He and his staff are still trying to kind of figure, and it's weird to say this 10 games in, but they're still trying to figure out what they have a little bit. I think they know their players pretty well by now, but they're still trying to figure out who works best together and the rotations, which is perfect for the non-conference season, also having the success that they've had, winning 7 of 10 games. Trying to figure some of that stuff out. They've got to be better defensively, especially with Big 12 play coming up, and they're going to have to be better on the boards. They got out-rebounded in their last game against Cal Baptist by 17 on the glass. Cal Baptist. Now, they're not a bad team. Cal Baptist, pretty good team in the WAC. They're picked to win the WAC, but you don't want to get out-rebounded by 17 boards by Iowa State or Kansas, much less Cal Baptist. So that's some of the stuff they're going to have to work on in the coming weeks, including this week, as they've got Mississippi State coming into the Delta Center to play them on Saturday night. And, Alex said this, they've got to play hard and together every night. Utah does not have a stud on their team. They don't have an all-conference caliber player right now on that roster. They don't have a guy that could just take over a game and that they could just turn. They have to do it collectively. They've got a couple of really good scorers. Terrence Brown and Don McHenry are good scorers. Then they've got a lot of guys right now who are playing good roles. Jake Patrick's emerging a little bit as a freshman. They're getting some good play out of guys like Seydou Traore and Keanu Dawes. But the key with this Utah team, and Alex and his staff have said this, is if they're going to win, if they're going to be successful, if they're going to be able to compete in the best conference in America. By the way, the Big 12 right now, we talk about it being the best conference in America. Right now, they've got 2 teams in the top 4 teams in the top 10. They've got the number 1 team in college basketball, the Arizona Wildcats. They've got 6 teams in the top 25 and 2 or 3 others that are receiving votes right now. This league is an absolute gauntlet. So Utah's got to work on itself over the next 3 games. They've got a game this weekend against Mississippi State. Then they've got a game coming up next week, and then they've got a game right after Christmas, right before New Year's, on the road, and it's going to be a good test. They go up to play Washington at Washington, and Washington's a good, not a great, but a good Big Ten team, and that'll be a good final non-conference test for them before they dive headfirst into Big 12 play. But the key for this team is there's not enough there right now to not play hard every single night, especially with the opponents getting better and better. Got to play hard and together every night to play and beat good teams. And they're going to face an interesting team coming up on Saturday night, Mississippi State, the Bulldogs. They've been to the NCAA tournament the last 3 years under Chris Jans. They beat Utah a year ago. They played, it's a weird thing, they played in just outside of Memphis, in northern Mississippi, in a place called South Haven. That's where the G League team for the Grizzlies is. So they played there, kind of a neutral site game, though it really wasn't neutral. It was in Mississippi. So they're coming back here this week to play at the Delta Center. Again, not really a neutral site game because it's 5 miles from campus and it's in Utah, but that's how they decided to play this thing. Saturday night downtown. Mississippi State's not great so far this year. They've played a good schedule. Really, their only notable win was against Georgia Tech, but they've lost to teams like New Mexico, SMU, Iowa State. They've played some really good teams. And they've got, if you watched the game last weekend against Cal Baptist, kid named Dominique Daniels, who's the preseason WAC player of the year, went for 31 points and 11 rebounds. He's just one of those dudes with the ball in his hand who can score it. Well, they've got one of those guys from Mississippi State, too. His name's Josh Hubbard, averages 21 a game, and he can really score it. Then they've got a kid named Jaden Epps who can really score the basketball, too. So Utah is going to be under some pressure. As I said, Mississippi State, not a crazily talented and good team right now at 4-5, but they've got some really nice pieces, and they've got some length and athleticism, and what Chris Jans likes to do is he likes to get physical and let you know his team is there. So it's going to be an interesting test on Saturday night. By the way, just if you want to come down, it's going to be a fun atmosphere. When Utah's been down at the Delta Center in recent years, it's been a lot of fun. Just, you got to buy your tickets. If you're a season ticket holder for Utah basketball at the Huntsman, this is not part of the season ticket package. So if you want to see them this week, you're going to have to buy that ticket separately. You can go to deltacenter.com and then search the Salt Lake Showcase. And you'll be set. You'll be ready to go for the Bulldogs and the Utes coming up on Saturday night. It's an 8 o'clock start time, so you can get all your stuff done on Saturday. Shoot, you can even come downtown, do a little Christmas shopping downtown, have a little bite to eat, and then come over to the ball game at about 8 o'clock. For the Utes and the Bulldogs on Saturday night at the Delta Center, Sean Mooney and I will have the call of that game for you on our flagship radio home, ESPN 700 and beyond. One other note before we get out of here today. A pretty historic happening on Wednesday. Well, it was kind of an all-week-long thing. It was a Monday announcement and then a Wednesday press conference. There is a new for the first time in 36 years, there is a new volleyball coach at the University of Utah. On Monday, after the season ended over the weekend in the NCAAs, longtime legendary Hall of Fame head coach Beth Lanier announced that she is retiring. What a run Beth had. 36, you just think about that, 36 years in coaching at the highest level at one place. That just doesn't happen. She's the second longest tenured coach in Utah athletics history. Only Greg Marsden, I believe it's Don Reddish, third longest tenured coach in Utah athletics history. And she'll turn the program over to Alyssa Dierko, who's been her top assistant, associate head coach for the last 3 years. There's some great interviews out on social media. I had a chance to sit down with Alyssa to get to know her and kind of introduce her to Utah fans. She is one of the best and most decorated volleyball coaches in the last She's one of the best and most decorated volleyball players of the last 25 years. She played at Penn State. In 4 years, won 4 national championships. So she comes to Utah with quite a resume, and she's coached at a lot of good places too, places like Louisville and Dayton. She is so well regarded in volleyball circles. She's been on the staff for 3 years. 36 years old. There's some symmetry there. Beth coached for 36 years. She coached as long as Alyssa was alive. And now Alyssa takes over the program. I think it's a great hire. One, because the team really likes and loves Alyssa. 2, because she's so well regarded in volleyball circles. 3, because of her volleyball pedigree. So she's the new head volleyball coach at the University of Utah. And again, you can find the social media video. Go to utahutes.com. Check the social media channels. You'll be able to find my sit down. It's good. We sat down and talked for a long time about a lot of things. And the one thing that will come through, well, a couple of things will come through. One, her competitiveness. She is one of the most competitive people I've ever met. And 2, her passion for the game and her passion for coaching for volleyball. So congratulations to Beth Lanier on an unbelievable run of 36 years here at the University of Utah. And congratulations to Alyssa D'Erico as being named the new head volleyball coach. A new era in Utah volleyball begins now. That is going to do it for us. If you will do me a favor, wherever you get this podcast, rate us and review us well. I put a lot into this. I love talking to you guys every week. It's been so much fun since we created this thing back in August to kind of keep this thing rolling and be able to talk to you on a regular basis. If you want to give me a little feedback on things, feel free to do so. Go to briley@huntsman.utah.edu. That's my email, briley@huntsman.utah.edu. And whether you're on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get this podcast, just rate us well, give us a good review, and share it with your friends because I love bringing this to you every week. So enjoy it. We'll be back next week, a little bit more on Utah football and the bowl game ahead. Maybe we'll have some clarity on the future of Kyle Whittingham. We shall see. And we'll talk some basketball too. Nick Bowlerjack produced this thing today, and I'm Bill Riley saying thanks for tuning in to the Crimson Corner, and go Utes.
You've been listening to the Crimson Corner podcast with Bill Riley. Bill is back next week with the latest on Utes. Download previous Crimson Corner episodes on all major podcast platforms.